trying this again. I'm trying this again. While I'm waiting for people, I'm just going to say who I am. My name is Suzanne Titkemeyer. I wrote for Pathos for almost 10 years. I still write. I still publish various places. I'm working on a book. And the working title of the book is A Quiver Full of A-Holes. My husband hates the title, but I just love it. So don't bully or harass anybody that I'm going to talk about today. These are just my opinions. And if you want to do the YouTube things, I would be so grateful. So where was I? I think I was getting ready to talk about the stone kid, what happened when they did the exorcism. Am I coming through better now? Somebody let me know. Good. Lisa, sometimes when I come in, if it doesn't work, if I go out and come back in, it'll work. And it's hard figuring YouTube out sometimes. But I think it might be Costa Rica. The stone kid, yes. I recognized pretty quickly he was stoned. I mean, it was enough to get a contact high off this kid. Huey, Dewey, Louie's friend, Robert. So I did to Robert what I did to the kid that worked for me at the movie theater. When I first moved to my little Virginia town, because my husband was military at the time, every decent job I applied at, I was told the exact same thing. It's like, we could hire you, but you're only going to be here a year or so anyway, and you're going to go, and we're looking for somebody long term. I heard a lot of that. I was really surprised. So I needed a job very badly. So I took a job at the local movie theater. And I loved the job. I worked with a bunch of teenagers. I actually loved the job. I loved being up there in the projection booth and running the projectors and editing the film and just all kinds of stuff involved with it. I even took some classes at UVA about film and film editing and all that different stuff. And it was pretty cool. It was just some classes I took. One of the things about working with teenagers is one is going to show up high. Sean worked for us as the, what do you call it? He was the usher, but he was a pretty poor usher. He showed up one day and his pupils were just huge. And I said, Sean, what is going on? He said, I accidentally took more acid than I've ever taken before. So I said, okay, calm down. So I set him in the corner on a stool and put a bottle of water in his hand. And I said, Sean, do not move. Well, Sean didn't move. He spent the entire time staring into the popcorn machine, giggling about the wild colors he was seeing in the popcorn. And all I could do was just laugh. And then after we closed up shop, I drove Sean home. I wasn't about to let him drive like that. And gave him to the grip of his college-age pals. They were all going to the local college, and said, don't let him go anywhere. He's so high, he can't walk. So because I had that experience, I recognized right away that Robert was chemically impaired in some way, shape, or form, but I thought it was just weed. So I sat Robert in the corner, slapped a bottle of water in his hand, and said, do not move. Well, this lock-in was an art one. We were all doing things like painting, sculpting. People were writing, all these different things. It's for the teenagers. And like you said, what a lovely, messy age. I love teenagers. I always have. I understand that messy stage for me. So anyway, here I am doing my thing, not watching to see where Robert is. And all of a sudden, I hear this weird noise. And I look over, and my friend Lana is sitting on Robert. Robert is on all fours like he's a stool or a bench. And she's sitting on him. Now, she's small. Microdosing, big deal in my state, on the verge of legalization. LSD, very dangerous. Can open mind paths, always not so good. Lisa, it's one of those things where you really have to be careful with it. I've taken it a couple times and I was not impressed. It's not something I would ever repeat. This is back in my misspent youth when I was making my mother and the nuns cry. So he's sitting on Robert. And I'm like, what the hell? So I look over there, and the next thing I know, not only is she sitting on him, but the triplets. They're all have their hands on him and they're all praying in tongues. And then she's screaming, "Demon, come out! Demon, come out!" And I'm looking over there again, and now he's flat on the floor, and she's sitting on him. And he's bucking like a fish and going, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And these weird voices, because they're cutting off all of his oxygen. And to my everlasting shame, I did not intervene. I should have intervened at that point, but I did not. I was too afraid of the consequences of intervening and say, "Leave the stone kid alone." This went on for about a half hour. They had him on the ground, and to the point where he had no oxygen, we started throwing up. And of course, it sounded like he was having, quote, demon voices because his airways were cut off. So this went on for quite a long time until he finally just passed out. And then they said, "Oh, good, the demon's gone." They got up off him. Years and years later, I asked him, "Brenda Lee, I got a friend I could hook you up with if you ever decide to do that." He's an expert at it. He used to grow them to sell to his dealer to get his weed. Hey, Claire Bear. So he would do all of that with the dope that he was being given. I don't know what happened with this kid. So years later, oh, he never went back. Yes, years later, I ran into him, calling, "Hey, Robert," and we talked a little bit. And this is a small town. I said, "Robert, do you mind me asking what was going on that night when they were supposedly exorcising you? Was it really a demon? Did you feel like there was a demon? Was it just that you were so stoned you could not sit up straight?" And his thing was like, "Man, I don't know what that was, but I never hope to repeat that again." So that was one of the things that was bad about the church. There was no sense of boundaries whatsoever. The And the things got weirder from there. Some of them were comical, some were not comical. There was a time that the pastor's wife made every kid in the place tear up and burn all their Pokemon cards, which was awful. Again, no boundaries. Why? Because of satanic panic. She said that all those Pokemon cards involved demons. So the last 5 or 6 years of our church, it was all demonic, 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 demonic. Everything was a demon. And Satan was after your butt. Demon be out. Can't we do that on some select channels? Demon be gone. Lisa, somewhere I have all of my healing ministry cards, all of my demon expelling cards, everything. Hey, Tracy, that we're supposed to use. And it makes me laugh now looking back on it. I'm like, why did I believe that? And at the time that this went down with the Stone Boy, I knew better, but I didn't stop because Linda was my pastor's frozen chosen. And to go against her, who was the church secretary, ran the church finances, did everything in the world for the pastor, would be like going up against the pastor. So I knew better. I knew that it was going to be a terrible reckoning if I did that. And I wasn't ready at that point to do that. Now I'm kind of ashamed I didn't. I apologized to Roberts and, "Hey, look, I should have been a responsible adult and shut the whole thing down, but I did not." And that was wrong. I'm sorry. One of the awful but kind of funny things about the church, too, was so many people had what I'm going to call prayer gossip. Lisa. I hear you. I told my husband this morning, I said, "If you hurt me anymore, I'm going to make a voodoo doll and stick pins in the crotch." Yeah, so I hear you. So one of the more awful things about it was this, besides this whole demonology, I forgot where I was going with all of this. Bossy, how are you doing? Oh, the prayer gossip. Prayer gossip was huge. It was big, and I didn't like to participate in anything remotely like that. I was on the healing team, So I would hear people's secrets. They would tell me, oh my goodness, I have X, Y, and Z going on. I think it's Satan. It's an attack from Satan. Um, I want prayer for it. And like a priest or a psychologist, you really can't share. But that never stopped people from coming up and saying, hey, I saw you praying for so and so. Can you tell me what's wrong with them? What's going on? Say, I can't do that. That would be breaking a confidence. Oh, no, come on. I just want to pray for them. I want to pray for them. I want to pray for them. No, I can't do that. You just better generally pray for them. If you're really interested in praying for them, just pray for them in general. Just pray for them, whatever God puts on your heart. And I would walk away. No secrets. So the way that way too caustic for me. Put you in a tight spot. I know it's awful. It's gorgeous in Massachusetts today. Oh, I had a hard time staying awake. Nebulizing treatment and see if it helps. Ah, hey, mocking media. I didn't even see you were here. No, I'm not going to sing your very funny lyrics again. That was pretty funny. And it's kind of funny because I've gotten zero pushback for that. And I was sure that I would wake up this morning and somebody would have done like a 3-hour live stream accusing me of everything short of. So that's fine. He's got bigger fish to fry than me. I'm a little tadpole. So the secrets thing is always a problem because you don't want to expose what other people are going through. And you want to shut down the gossip. Years later, the main gossip prayer person had the most unfortunate thing I've ever seen happen. I missed the signing. You want to do a second set tonight? Yes. Do you want me to come on panel? I should be able to. I got to clean the guest house more because we've got guests coming, but after that, I should be fine. Yeah. Happy to be a grandma. That's exactly right. That's what these people would do. And mocking, I don't know how favorite I was after that because that is too low for me to sing. And I tried to do it. I tried to modulate up and it didn't work. And so I just kind of had to go with original voice. And somewhere I hope that Roger's not turning in his grave because I did the best I could. I didn't know this, but he had written a ton of hit songs for all kinds of different genres and artists. And that song actually won a pile of Grammys, including Best Rock Song and Best Country Song for that year, which is all kinds of crazy. Pull the comfort over your head, weather. Don't know if you're having that kind of weather here. Here it's hot. It's hotter than it usually is. It's dry. I'm waiting for rainy season because I can't plant anything in the garden. I can't get anything done. It's too dusty for me to go outside this room. But basically, I'm going to have to go turn all the ACs on in the cabina and let it cool down before I go in there and clean anything because it's just way too hot. It's way too hot. Orlando. Orlando, and you want to pull a comforter over your head? Oh my goodness. He'd understand. Roger, I think he would. I think he would appreciate the parody. How did you not turn your back completely on religion and churches with your crazy experiences? Lisa, let me say, it has been hard not to. Right now, I'm not going to church because the infection rates are so high here. My husband is after me to go to his church. Let me explain about the 3 English-speaking churches here. One we've gone to for 4 years. We like the church. We like what they were doing. I go because my husband wants me to go, not because I'm really getting anything out of it. And I've always been on worship team. I was on worship team there. And so I had to leave because they ended up siding with a lady who had a emotional support dog over me. And I was super allergic to the dog to the point where I had to use my EpiPen a couple times and get out of there just with the dog going in. So there, So I left, and they had run the pastor off. The pastor was a very good, humble man named Lyle. I adored Lyle, and that's saying something because I usually don't like many posturing pastors. He was not. He was real, and he would be real with you. He had banned dogs from the sanctuary after he saw me have a pretty serious asthma attack because somebody brought their fuzzy dog. And so I loved Lyle, and then Lyle left. The board ran him off. One of the things that I've discovered is I'm in a community where there are a lot of rich gringos, tons and tons of them. Now, in their little churches back in the States, or their congregation in the States, they were pretty much a big fish in the small pond. Here, they're just another fish in the pond. They're no more influential than anyone else. So you get these weird things that will happen here that don't happen in church stateside. One of the people that was going to church with us was agitating against the pastor, and he managed to turn a number of people against the pastor. And eventually the board just ousted the pastor because they didn't think he was doing a good job, and I thought he was doing a fabulous job. I knew there were people who didn't like him. They didn't think he preached a hard word enough, that they thought he was too slipshod and liberal. And that's what did him in. They pushed him out. And it kind of broke my heart because I love the pastor and his family. They were really good people. So then we started visiting. We visited the two other local churches that are primarily gringo. Lisa, that church did not believe in exorcism, but they tried to exorcise me of my demon at my old church. And I was told to throw away all medicine, all the VPAP machines, all nebulizers, and trust that God was going to heal me. And I did that. I made my asthma so much worse. So we were searching for another church. There's one right down the street. I don't even want to call their names because they're running and gunning. With a guy who got mad with Lyle, went off there and said, I'm taking my money elsewhere to play. And he went there and he's taken over the whole church. And it's probably a good thing because the church now is now beautiful instead of being just a outdoor thing with folding seats. So he's done some good with his money. He started programs and feeding people and such. So that church, my problem with them, and we have friends that were going there, so I would have been going into a large friend group right there. It's the pastor. The pastor preaches this very hard word. He throws hellfire and damnation into every sermon. I was there on Christmas Eve because Christmas Eve, they do the only local sermon, only local service, and then we have a big tamale feast afterwards. I'm sitting there listening to the Christmas sermon, and most places, they don't do hellfire and brimstone. They do like a gentle come to Jesus, this Christmas story thing that the many visitors and everyone can take in without being offended. Not this guy. He went hardcore. You're going to hell. You're going to burn in hell in the middle of his sermon. And my friend that was there turned to me and said, what do you think of the sermon? Catholic Church is a little bit different. I'm just going to say that. Exactly, Lisa. I can put up with a whole lot of nonsense for tamales. So I told him, I said, I understand this is a church that preaches fire and brimstone, but you not want to do that on a Christmas service when you have visitors, you have relatives, you have all kinds of people who are going to hear that and say, oh, hell no. Well, that's the truth. And I said, no, that is your interpretation of the truth. So we haven't been back. Now, my husband is going to this church. It's the largest one in the area. The church I was going to initially, Tamarindo Church, had been the largest one in the area. Now this one is the largest one in the area. And the pastor has bragged that he has a mega church in the jungle. He does not. So he's bragged about this, which I think is kind of weird. But the pastor's really decent. Bossy, I am getting ready to take extra Lyrica because they're talking about raising my Lyrica because it suddenly stopped working. So he's a nice guy. I like the pastor as a person. I don't know if I like him as a pastor. I'm going to be real frank with you about that. And so my husband goes to this church. He's really involved. He does this, he does that. He sells t-shirts. He does all sorts of things. And it fits him. The church is what he calls revival. Probably the last 7 or 8 years I was at my old church, we were all in revival mode. And I'm just burned out from that. I can't sit there and listen to some of the songs. That's the day I stepped out of that grave, and I'm like, no, 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 la, 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 la. I'm not hearing it. I'm not singing it. And I tried to join their worship team. And the first week I was there that I was going to sing, I was the only vocalist, only female vocalist. They painted in the church. And I am horribly allergic to a paint with latex in it. So I immediately started reacting and had to leave. And I've had that experience there before where I've walked in, somebody's had a dog. That's not so much, only one time. Or I'm very sensitive to colognes. Colognes are one of those things that will get me every time, between the colognes and people's personal grooming smells. Yeah. I already sang it, Claire. You got to go back and look. I already did it. It's done. It's done. It's uploaded. It's on my channel. So there it was. So he's really happy with his revival time. And for me, it's been more problematic. One day when I went to leave there to go to the car to go back to the house to get my husband's little change box so he could sell t-shirts, I was wearing a mask. And before I got from where I was sitting to our car, I had two different members stop me and say, "Take off that mask. This church does not mask." Brenda Lee, that's why. Yeah. And in the States, I used to use zero VOC. That was the only way I could cope with zero VOC. And it worked out. But here, there's not much zero VOC. I've even stopped at the giant Sherwin-Williams in Liberia, and nobody here has it. So there's that. So there are anti-maskers there. There's lots of anti-maskers. I've heard people say things to me and my husband like, well, everybody just needs to get COVID so we can all be over it. It's not that bad. It's not blah, 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 blah. And that's what we know, people in the congregation who've died of it. But apparently they have decided it's not a big deal. So I haven't been back since the rates got high, and I'm not sure I'm going back. Like I said, I'm not getting, Perry's a nice guy, but I'm not getting anything out of the sermons much. The music is old, like 20 years ago, revival music. And I'm just like, no, I'm not singing that crap again. My husband is like, oh, revival. And I'm just like, nope. And this week we had lunch with a lady from the church that we both know that we've lent our power washer to. Lisa, it sucks. And there are a lot of Trump supporters there too. And I kind of went off on one the other day. I was in her house having lunch with her, and her home was beautiful on the top of a mountain overlooking the ocean. But after lunch, she started talking religion and politics. And I was sitting there rather horrified, rolling my eyes at my husband, where she could not see, but he knew I was rolling my eyes. And I knew what he thought about those things. She was trying to say things about the election. And I had to stand up and say, no, that is absolutely not true. You're pushing talking points that were fed to you by a certain portion of the GOP. The reality is this happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened, and the election is over with. So get over it. Brenda Lee, a lot of times that's exactly what they think at these places. Oh, they had secret sin doing them in. And that's what we used to say at the old church about healing. If somebody didn't get healing, I had a dear friend that had MS, and we would pray for her and the healing team a number of times. And everybody else said, I can feel the demon on her. She has a deep, dark secret and a demon, a demon. She has MS. That's a legitimate disease. But the healing theology there is that you don't name it. If you name it, you claim it. So you don't give any glory to your symptoms. You pretend your symptoms don't exist. You don't take meds. You just keep on going. And as I was writing about that in my book yesterday, that is a theology that has a huge body count in my old church and a huge body count any place I've ever seen it practiced. It did lead to some kind of comical moments, though, I got to tell you that. But so one day, a little girl was up testifying about something she'd be healed about and threw this plastic bag full of stuff, caught it in her hand and broke a bunch of her fingers. And I was like, whoa. So I saw so many times with these people that were claiming they'd been healed. Every conference, they got up and said, I have been healed of X, Y, and Z. I don't have any demons. And 3 weeks later, how you doing, so-and-so? Well, my colitis is flaring up. It's like, oh yeah, that colitis that you said you were healed of 3 weeks ago on the stage at Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship, that. So I saw a lot of that, a lot. And I also saw some pretty strange things that ever happened through that as well. People wouldn't take medicine, but they would take supplements big time. And I used to get a lot of crap because even then I tried to be science-based. I went to the doctor. I took my kids to the doctor. And there are a lot of people that don't believe in that at all. And they will give you crap about it. Basically, with us, what ended up happening with some issues that my husband was having, which were depression, it turns out it was a tumor in his parathyroid glands. It was not depression. As soon as the tumors were removed, the depression left. When they're teaching in medical school about parathyroid tumors, they say stones, bones, groans with psych overtones. So brittle bones, lots of pain, and depression. Groupthink mentality. They don't want to be left out of the experience that go along with with feeling the demons. That's exactly right. So you should piss me off because they will try to say, you got a demon. I'm like, no, I don't. If I had a demon living in this body, he would run because it would hurt too much. He would be like, what the hell is this? Ouch, ouch. He'd be running off. But before my husband had his parathyroid diagnosis and he was having significant depression, they sent us to a deliverance ministry. And here's the thing, I wasn't going to go. And I think they all knew that I was not going to go. So guess what I found out about it? They had scheduled it for the weekend of Thanksgiving, for the Saturday and Sunday of Thanksgiving. And my husband told me on Thanksgiving morning, he said, I've arranged for our children to stay with this relative that we're going to eat Thanksgiving dinner at their house. And then you and I are leaving for Wilmington, North Carolina to go visit this deliverance ministry. Well, I was livid. I argued with him. I fought with him. It didn't seem to do any good. So away we went. And it was a horrible experience. They only kept me almost 3 hours because I was not cooperative. And basically what they were praying for and praying about was they said, well, we prayed for all week for you and God showed us all this stuff. So they gave me a long list of stuff that they had intuited for me through God and through prayer. They said I was having an affair. They said my husband was having an affair. Those were the biggies, I think. And then they said something about I tended to dwell too much in the past. Well, I do tend to go back over things and say, I should have said that. I should have said that. I should have done that. Oh, that I will do. But they were making all kinds of comments and said, you're a writer. You like to write because it comforts you. No, I write because because I can't not write. I have to write. And I don't feel normal unless I'm writing. And it's a really helpful tool if you're sorting your feelings out, even back then. Did they play banjos of the deliverance ministry? Java man, no. And the sad thing is, the church that was running the deliverance ministry, I liked the pastor. I didn't like the two guys that were doing my deliverance ministry. And after 3 hours of them telling me all this stuff and me going, no, that's not even remotely true. You like to do X, Y, and Z. No, I don't do that. I'm not a fan of that. None of that. They got it so incredibly wrong that somewhere between 2.5 and 3 hours, they had to let me go. And they would not let my husband go. He, they told me I was having an affair with a guy named Walt. Now, I did know a Walt, but I can assure you I was not having an affair with him. He was one of my closest friends' husband, and he ran our worship team. He was a really sweet guy. I loved him for who he was, but I was definitely not having an affair with him. So I left. I went back to our hotel. We were staying on the beach in North Carolina. I went and rented a surfboard and a wetsuit and spent the afternoon surfing. They didn't call me to come pick up my husband until 9 hours had passed. 9 hours. And I've asked him since a bunch of times, what did they do? And for a long time, he couldn't tell me. Recently he told me that they had their list too, and I saw his list, so I laughed over it when he gave it to me. Basically, they were in there 9 plus hours, trying to brainwash his ass, saying all kinds of stuff. So they were doing some of the same things. They told him I was having an affair. Fortunately for us, we'd been married long enough and were in each other's lives enough. We knew there was no way we were having affairs, neither one of us. The list they gave him said that he loved to fish as a hobby. He hates it. They said that he was in love with Star Wars and he watched all the Star Wars movies and obsessed about it. He hates Star Wars. I mean, I quit watching the Star Wars or Star Trek, anything when he's around because he hates it. So they had all this stuff, and they had told me that he had a demon of rage in him, that if they didn't exercise the demon of rage, he was going to kill me one day. This is a man that has only lifted a hand to me once, and that was because I socked him first. We were having a vicious argument, and I just clocked him. And he slapped me back on my shoulder, and I was like, ow, you're like 18 inches taller than me or some ridiculous amount and bigger and heavier, and that was stupid. That was real stupid. And when I was telling my aunt about it, she said, oh, it's good that you didn't call the law. John Law would have hauled you off and charged you with domestic violence. Hey, do good letters. So I try not to clock my partner now because I know what can happen. I know he's a lot bigger. So that's the only time. This ministry in North Carolina really screwed us up big time as far as some things, because my poor husband tried to do all the stuff they were saying he needed to do. And he, like me, adored the pastor, who is a former nuclear engineer, is a really smart guy. He is about as vicious as a butterfly. Like I said, I clocked him. He pushed me away, and I'm like, ow, and we have had some fights and had some crazy stuff happen. One time we had a fight in a hotel room, and he threw my laptop over the balcony 4 stories down. I picked up a bottle of perfume, Estee Lauder, and clocked him in the head with it. So it was like, you don't throw my laptop. We were having a fit. So we don't do that. I think that time is going to beat him too, because yeah. So I try not to beat anybody. Which church in North Carolina? Well, the church has changed names a bunch of times. At one point, they were Vineyard. in Wilmington, North Carolina, run by a pastor called Tom Hauser. Tom Hauser is still there. They're still running the deliverance ministry, the crazy deliverance ministry that they were running. Even though some of the people who were running the deliverance ministry and said that God heals everything have since died from cancer. My boyfriend had a friend that was sometimes insinuating I was cheating. Oh, that's always fun. That's always fun when they say that. So Tom House's church in North Carolina, I'm gonna have to look it up because they've changed names of the church 2 or 3 times. They've changed names for the ministry, for the deliverance ministry, a bunch because they've been sued. There have been some people that are sued over it. Like I said, none of it was true. It was just, I don't know where they're pulling this crap out of their ass or whatever when they were praying for us. It wasn't even close. And I pretty much lost all respect for Tom Hauser at that point because it's like, you allowed my husband to drag me here on a family holiday away from my family to hear this ridiculous lies. And I didn't need to hear that they thought my husband was going to kill me one day. That was just pretty ridiculous and over the top. And I've since laughed at some of the crap that went down at that church too. I was the last time I had anything to do with him, our pastor's wife had pressed me into making worship flags for them because that was something I did, and I had tons of worship flags. And I remember grumbling and griping the whole time because I was going to be up $500 or $600 out of pocket for the materials alone before even coming up with the. So the cheating thing, I think about the cheating thing a lot because if we'd been newly married, if we'd have been a newly married couple, that might have crushed our entire relationship and caused a divorce. The cheating never happened. It never happened at all. They played rock and roll. They would qualify as what our dear friend would say, rock and roll church. In other words, contemporary worship music, which is the true term for it, not rock and roll church. And they played all the stuff that was new then, that was revival stuff that is old now, that this new church that my husband goes to. So I'm not getting anything out of the new church, except I'm getting some ideas for writing a sermon. So be it. Satan's music. If it's got a syncopated beat, you are gonna burn. And somewhere here, I have my little book, some notes I took. I also have my last wishes. When I got really sick recently and was in the hospital, I had written out what to do if I died. I mean, everything, because I knew my daughter would find this and she would know what to do with it. I gotta find this. I've got some sermon notes I took at the church the last time I attended, where the guy speaking said the most ridiculous phrases. I've got them all written down. Yeah, I wrote down, this is what needs to happen when I die. And the funniest thing was I got a hold of my notebook when I was in the hospital, when I was fighting with the nurses, where they had IVs up and down each arm and everything was going haywire. I wrote about it. And it's like the most over-the-top, ranty, crazy words. And I've since been told that some people have confusion when they're having these kind of problems. And I can say very truly, I can see that after viewing what I wrote. So, yeah. So Satan's music. And a lot of churches believe that any kind of syncopated music is a sin. I know the Duggars themselves believe that. They've talked about that. And there's another lady that I can't think of her name right now on YouTube that talks about religion, that she had a video the other day, a couple of weeks ago, that was all about how fundamentalism is bigger than the Duggars. And that's very true. It's huge. And it has as many variations as butterflies. Where I attended church initially was a charismatic evangelical church. with quiverful leanings. About half the people were quiverful. Southern Baptist, dancing equals sex. I've always laughed at the dancing equals sex. And that explains a lot, because one of the things that happened when we were going to the old church is there were four couples, including us, who were close friends. And I remember one night we were all getting together, watching movies and doing stuff, walking into the living room, and one of the ladies was dancing. And the men, except for my husband, were transfixed watching her wiggling fanny. That's all I can say. And I kind of laughed a little bit, but one of the other couples, the women, went nuts and pulled her husband away by his ear. They had not seen my dancing, or else they would know it's not all. That is not true at all. They haven't seen my dancing either. And considering I have two left feet and one's on backwards, my poor mother decided to make me less gawky when I was a kid. So she put me in ballet. It didn't solve that at all. I could dance in ballet, but I could trip over my own foot and fall down too at the same time. So those guys were just transfixed by Alice and her dancing. Shortly thereafter, Alice and one of the guys started having an affair. The wife that was mad and hauled her husband away by the ear, she started having an affair, and it just went haywire. The two that were having an affair, Alice and Tom, made the mistake of using me as an excuse. There was a huge Van Gogh exhibit that had come to the Smithsonian, and they had asked, and there was some talk of us going, but we never did get together a group to go see the Van Gogh exhibit. And both of them, like myself, are artists, so they really wanted to go. Well, one Sunday I went to church, and Tom's wife, came up to me and said, "Oh, it's really nice of you to treat Tom to a stay at the Willard just so you can get free tickets to see the Van Gogh exhibit. Because at the Smithsonian, while the Smithsonian is free, the special exhibits cost, and they can cost quite a bit. And some of the things like the Van Gogh exhibit, it's hard to get tickets. Some of the better hotels in DC were giving away tickets if you booked a 2 or 3 night stay." And I told her, I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't been to the Van Gogh exhibit. I haven't been anywhere near the Willard Hotel. That's too rich for my blood." And I told her Tom had not been with me and we'd not been to the exhibit. I didn't know what she was talking about. Before the service was over, pattern. Yep, that does seem to be a thing. Hold a dance in a barn. That solve everything. You're right, Monkey Media. So then the husband of the cheater wife, Alice's husband, came to me and said, "Oh, it's so wonderful. You got a suite at the Willard for three nights so that you all could go see the Van Gogh exhibit. I just want to thank you." I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen the Van Gogh exhibit. I was not in DC this weekend at a hotel, and I was nowhere near Alice." Well, it came out that Alice and Tom had gone to DC for the weekend. They'd stayed in the Willard Hotel specifically to get free tickets to the Van Gogh exhibit. And I had busted them by telling their spouses they weren't there with me. I had no idea. So that caused a huge ruckus at the church. And as I'm writing my book, I sat down and I counted out the number of people I knew had had affairs, either active affairs at that time or they'd had an affair in the past, not the distant past either. I started counting it out, and I think it was something like, I came up with something like 12% of the population of the church that I knew of had affairs. So I have to look at that and wonder why. I know that evangelicalism has higher divorce rates than just about anywhere else, but it's really hard to track infidelity because that's self-reported, and I'm sure people underreport that crap. Lisa, they should have called me. Let me just throw it out there. If I ever have to alibi anybody for anything, let me know about it first, because when the police or whoever show up, I'm just going to be saying, "I don't know what you're talking about," if you don't tell me. I mean, I don't. and wasn't going to lie for either one of them at that point. Well, I would not have done it. I would have talked them out of it. And I think that's why they didn't tell me, because I would have talked them out of it. So, of those couples, one, the lady is dead. The cheater is dead. And the other couple divorced. And Alice went on to get her PhD, and she's teaching at a small liberal arts college. I saw her again because her husband decided to run for Congress, an unsuccessful run. But I was at the Democratic Party where they were having the candidates speak, and I saw Alice, who immediately ran up and wanted me to not tell her husband or anybody else about her former history with us. And I said, don't worry, I'm not going to say a word. I won't say a word. I wouldn't do that to you. So she and her first husband are divorced, and she's married to somebody with some crazy, super liberal ideas. So she really did a flip there. And the other couple, where the husband was cheating, he and his wife are still together. He's still screaming out to anybody who'll listen that he's going to leave her at some point, and he never has. He's only attempted it once that I know of. The saddest was my friend that died. Cindy couldn't continue. I was really broken up about that for a really long time because she was nuts. She had some kind of real mental illness going on. I mean, to the point where my aunt, who was a psychiatric nurse, met her and said, Suzanne, she's not well in the head. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. I have to talk about her another day, Kathy, because she was a very close friend of mine for a long time. She was the only person that when fundamentalism and the church started getting to me, I could pick up the phone and call Kathy and say, let's go shoot guns and tin cans off the fence rail with guns and smoke cigars. Let's go swimming with the Polar Bear Club. She and I were kind of the wild women of the way of the place. So when I needed to step away from our God is an awesome God and being all submissive and say, let's smoke and fire guns and do this and do that, she was always down for that. Always down for that. And she would also drink alcohol in moderation, but drink all the same. But it was really weird. The thing that ended our friendship was really bizarre. I had started going to Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship to the conferences, and I loved it. Oh, they are the most fun. They are the most fun, Lisa. And she was fun. She was a close friend, too. And she kept telling me that she kept having affairs. And it was because she said her husband wasn't masculine enough. Her husband was a nice person. I really liked him. We were real good friends with him, too. And at the end, it came down to the fact that I went to Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship sometimes, probably 5 or 6 times a year. And she said, you have to choose between myself and Toronto. And I said, I'm going to miss you. It's been nice knowing you, but none of my friends dictate what my faith is. No one can. And so that ended the friendship. And that was after many, many, many years. It's sad. She's died of cancer. She's another one that does not believe in any kind of medicine, healing prayer only. Well, she started having headaches, and it got so bad she finally went to the ER. And it was cancer. It was uterine cancer that spread all over her body. It was in her brain. It was everywhere. And they gave her 2 weeks to live. And she spent that 2 weeks going from healing ministry to healing ministry to get prayer for her cancer. And she died. And her husband has done the most typical thing I've seen in evangelicalism. He collected a huge life insurance policy. He bought a sports car. He got a cooler, younger, bouncier wife. I've seen that played out many times in my old church, especially because women especially were not encouraged to go to the doctor. Men did for the most part, but women did not. So I'm going to trust God, because that was one of the things for me that was the breaking point that I started to pull away. Was I developed all kinds of problems with myself below the waist, and I ended up having a complete and total hysterectomy. Got so bad, I got so anemic that it was that or I was going to die. I mean, it was that point. And I had people at that church telling me that I was sinning by getting the hysterectomy, that I needed to wait on God's providence and healing. Now, do I believe God can heal people? Yes. Do I understand it? No. And I'm a big believer in going to the doctor. I have to think Jesus would be too for people. So I don't know. That was one of the weirder things. But like I said, it's just been so weird. And it's been kind of crazy when I started writing about all this now, because it's so much revisiting old traumas. A lot of it is. And it's just been really hard. And I think that's why, in fact, I know that's why I reacted to Mr. McSwine so violently when he first started attacking me, is how much trauma I've had in my life. And I just reacted out of that trauma. I curled up in a little ball, and that was it. And I've since moved into the state where all I do is laugh my ass off at his hijinks. But it took me a while to get there because, like I said, I was triggered back into my old church experience. It was pretty bad. And so I can only take a little triggering each day, and I write a chapter or so and go back and edit. But I'm trying to do it the most comedic way possible, because when I initially started writing the book, it was serious, and I just couldn't do it. I kept ending up on the floor crying. So this is it. And this is 16 or 17 years after I left. It's been quite a while. Like the apostle was a physician, so there is that. Yes, and Jesus sent some guy to the doctor to confirm his healing. So clearly he didn't have a problem with doctors, because why would you send someone to one? So I think that church, God, whatever, has been overtaken by people that don't have the first clue what anything in the Bible means. And they don't have a clue about how it's more about following Jesus and trying to be as much like him as possible. Lisa, I think it does. It used to drive people in LQ, no longer quivering. I used to have people that would show up and say, you know, when I first came here, I was so mad at you. I came here to fight with you. But after a while, I realized the stuff you were saying was actually true. And that was happening to me in my old church. And I'm not surprised, because that's one thing I will tell you about fundamentalist churches, evangelical churches. They rob women of their voice. They take away their agency. They expect you to be a smiling sex robot. And I don't know about you, but I am so not a smiling sex robot. I had to laugh because the other day, Jim and I were having lunch with this lady that we know from the church. And she kept saying over and over, you and Jim, I don't have any friends except you and Jim that have a healthy marriage. And I thought it was kind of funny because it would squabble a little bit in front of her too. So the church is sick. It just is. The church worldwide I'm talking about is more sick than whole. And that's really a shame. When I think about it, it makes me want to cry. So you guys, I'm going to go. I'm putting off working on the guest house. I think it's pretty clean. We had guests recently, and I cleaned it pretty well after they left. So I'm thinking all I really need to do is sweep and use a little cleaner on the cabinets, not the cabinets, the countertops, and completely restock all the crap that goes in it. So I'm hoping that, because I don't want to have to do it. I was mopping the floor. Why am I mopping in the middle of the night? I hate mopping. So the house is squeaky clean. I'm about to go out there and make the cabina squeaky clean. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go. Love you all. I have a strange story still yet to tell.